First couple of years, I also
Other places. That's usually how it comes. Why we
We'll start in just a couple minutes.
and is reviewing them on a responsible program. I can. But I know it's feedback. Does anyone else want to ask you to copy the agenda? Good evening, Morrisville Council meeting of Monday, August 18th, 2014. We'll start the meeting with a moment of silent prayer, followed by the pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This evening we have
Dave Rebella. Here. Mr. Sherlock.
here.
Fred Kerner. Here. Victor Cicero.
Here.
Jeffrey Johnson. Here. Frank Tronic.
Here.
Ted Parker.
Here.
Todd Sanford. Here. Debbie Smith.
Here.
Sean Cocaine.
Here.
Tom Bates and Robert Rose here.
On your agendas, you'll see special presentations. There is also a short executive session after 4C. The third presentation, Mr. Art Brown, the attorney, will be here, and we'll just take some public knowledge. We'll be taking hopefully it's only a 10 or 15-minute exec session. That being said, we'll start with the 4A, that's the swearing in of our new part-time police officer, Ken Berger. So I think the corporal and Officer Berger will come forward. No, Mike, start.
Got this one over here too.
Can hear you this one, right?
No, you can't hear you.
Just repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Kenneth Berger,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
and defend
and defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of this Commonwealth,
of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge
and I will discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity. Thank you.
You guys are great. Well, you come in uniform right here. It's like you're feeling it. Aww. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome, Officer Berger. Next, if we can move 4C up. Ms. Berger, I'm so sorry. Officer Berger. That was last time. I apologize. I'm a little confused here because I have no mic. Oh, okay. If I could please move it with the council developments, if we can move the legal external affairs manager, Ted, during if we can move him up at this time. Ted?
Good evening, Council President Sherlock, Mayor Rebella, members of council, and members of the EAC that are here, and others here in the audience. My name is Ted Duran. I'm PECO's External Affairs Manager for Bucks County. I'm here this evening with Holly Harper from the Natural Lands Trust. I'll ask Holly up in a second. Here this evening to present a check for $7,500 to Morrisville Borough for the project involving the Morrisville Riverfront Preserve. We know that the borough has been engaged in efforts at the preserve for several years now and also been active in other efforts in open space preservation and conservation within the borough for a number of years. If you allow me just a few seconds, I'd like to point out that this year PICO is celebrating its 10th anniversary of the Green Region program. We began the program in 2004, and since that time we've awarded nearly $1.4 million in grants to 180 projects throughout our service territory. And I'd like to also mention that this is the second time that the borough has been awarded a grant. The borough was awarded a grant for the Williamson Park Recreation Trail back in 2009, which we completed. So we're here this evening to present this money to you in the hopes that we can further your efforts. And with that said, I'd just like to point out that we're the electric distribution company. We're not the experts in environmental preservation, land conservation. When we decided to launch this program in 2004, we sought the services of Natural Lands Trust. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the Trust's work over the course of many decades, and they are the preeminent natural lands and land conservation and preservation organization in our region, and we asked them to help us design the program and judge the projects and help us arrive at decisions. We simply provide the money, they do all the work. So we're pleased that they're willing to do that with us and have been our partner for 10 years. Holly, if you'd like to say anything.
I mean, first of all, Natural Lands Trust is very honored to be PICO's partner in this wonderfully successful program. It meshes perfectly with our mission of saving land, stewarding natural resources, and connecting people to nature. So as Ted said, here we are 10 years later, $1.4 million that PICO, a private corporation, has invested into its hometown, into making this a better place to live. And it's quite unusual for that. So kudos go to them for this environmental investing. When they developed the Green Region program, it was their vision to assist municipalities in maximizing their dollars for open space projects. And often these types of projects are pretty hard to find traditional funding for. So that's what's so great about this program, because here you have a project, a small but very important project like the Riverfront Preserve, and now hopefully it's going to be possible with some assistance. So congratulations to you as well.
Thank you.
So if you'd like, we'd like to gather everyone around quickly for a photograph, and then we'll make sure that everyone, yeah.
Anyone wants to be in it? Anyone wants to be in it? Just right here.
I think that I'd like to see that somebody,
Sure, absolutely. Positively. Before I forget it, this is the fake check. This is the real one. Thank you very much.
Hey, I gotta go. Why don't we utilize the steps in the back? That's good. That's good. Okay, just we need someone who's accepted. Oh wow. All right, Grace, come on in closer. So why don't you come up a little bit? Why don't you come over? Holly, I need to be able to see you. Bear, why don't you come on in? You are the okay. Could you come over here just a little bit so I can make sure I can see you? And is this okay? Okay, we're going to take a couple shots. Sign straight.
Big smiles.
Sign straight.
You're fine. Oh, down on yours a little bit. Okay, great. Oh, look how beautiful that is. All right, good, very nice. Oh, I can't see you at all. So yeah, move right there. Great. Look how fancy this is. Okay, good. Yeah, there we see your head. All right, good. Everybody else?
Okay. Thank you.
Everybody look at me,
Oh, sorry, one was for the newspaper.
because somebody was hiding me for. Okay, this is great. Big smiles. Thank you.
Oh, I know, I was up here.
Okay, thank you all very much, appreciate it. Have a good night.
Good night. Thank you very much, Pico.
That's my grandson.
Back there.
Excuse me, folks, next we have a very important guest with us this evening. Please come forward. It's one of Bucks County's finest, our commissioner, Robert Walker. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You okay?
That's a tough act to follow. I don't have a big chance like that. I should wrong, right? You can scribble that out. He said it wasn't real. Well, good evening, and thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm not texting. I just have my notes on my phone here, so make sure I cover the things I want to do. Thank you for allowing me to come before you. You responded to a letter that I asked if I could come before council, because I've been trying to get out to visit all 54 of the municipalities, and started this endeavor the beginning of 2012. Just a little history. I was appointed in 2011 to fill out the unexpired term of Lieutenant Governor Cawley, and then I ran that year and was elected, and I thought that when I got elected, starting my first year, my first term, I'd go out and try to visit all 54 municipalities. Thought I'd be able to do that in a year, and then I realized probably wouldn't work. So I've spread it out about a third and a third and a third, and coming to the end of meeting almost with all 54 municipalities. And when I started, the idea was to do a couple of things. One, to introduce myself. I guess I've been in the position now a couple of years, that the introduction is probably not as grand as it would have been in the very beginning, but there's a lot of members of council who I don't know, so I wanted to come and say hello, share a little bit about what the priorities have been and are at the county, and then listen to you to hear some of the issues and concerns and priorities that you have here in the borough. You know, one of our main priorities, and I'm sure it's one of yours, as it's been with every municipality that I've visited, has been dealing with the economic times that we're in and the budgets that we all have to deal with. If you kind of rewind back to 2012, when we were at the end of 2011 preparing for our 2012 budget at the county, we were faced with about a $24 million deficit going into the 2012 budget. And we made some decisions as to how to close that gap. And one of those was there was a tax increase that was put in place. It was the first one in about 5 or 6 years. And that revenue really was going to cover about half of that deficit, just for round numbers, call it $12 million. And we decided that the other half, we felt we could close the gap through different means and measures, primarily through trying to reduce the size of the workforce at the county. And if you recall, going back to 2012, one of the steps that we took was there were some layoffs in the county that we put into effect. They weren't a lot, granted that they had impact on about 24 individuals, so that was an impact to them. But overall, with an employee base that was close to 2,600, we felt that we could reduce the size of the workforce as a way to help us with our budget, really through attrition. And interestingly enough, just last week at the Grange Fair, we announced the financial report from 2013. And I'm happy to report that as a result of those measures that we took in 12 and continued on through 13, that our workforce size in the county has reduced almost 8%, mostly through attrition. In other words, we're not hiring once a position becomes vacant. There are certain positions that we we need to hire essential positions, whether they be at the Champaign Manor, the nursing home, or correction officers, or people in the emergency management, 911. But overall, we've been able to reduce that head count, and as a result, that saves us anywhere between $14 to $15 million a year. We put some other measures into place. We did some outsourcing primarily. We outsourced our health care at our prison, which at the time I had a lot of people asking me, why are you providing health care to prisoners to begin with? But we need to do that. And up until July of 2013, the county had on staff nurses, and then we kind of contracted out with different medical providers. But we did an RFP selection process and selected a firm called Prime Care, which specializes in correctional medical services. And we're able to not so much save money, we're probably breaking even. Most of the nurses that work for us are now working for Prime Care. But one of the major things that we were able to accomplish in that was shedding the liability that we had when it came to healthcare issues, which Prime Care takes on. And that's proven to be very important and successful to us. And as I was saying last week at the Grange Fair, we announced our financial report, and I'm happy to report that we were able to put nearly $6 million back into the county's reserve fund, which if we had a chart the other week, I wish I had it right now, but we essentially at one point had about $60 million, and we sort of pushed that down to about 40. We're now back up to $50 million in our reserve fund. Our workforce size, as I said, is about 8% smaller than it was when we started in 2012. And on top of all this, continuing to make our contributions to our retirement fund. Our retirement fund, our pension fund, as we just reported last week, is now 99.2% funded. So we went from writing checks of about $13 or $14 million when I started, and they started to go down 11, 10, I think about $9 million will be what the ARC requirement is this year. And that's a big, I don't want to say savings, not the right way to put it, but not having to write a $12 million check, we can use that $12 million in a lot of other ways and a lot of other services at the county. So the budget then and today is still a main priority of ours. Staying on top of that, we've been able to hold the line, without a tax increase since then, and I strongly see us being able to do the same over the next couple of years because of some of these measures that we put into place. All the while, I don't really think impacting the services that we're still providing at the county, which we continue to do open space preservation. We just announced last week at the Grange Fair our 168th farm that was preserved. We're up to 14,250 acres at this point of farmland that has been preserved in Bucks County. So those measures have helped us a long way with our budget, maintaining the services, and yet still doing the critical things that we need to do. We put more money into bridges. We own about 114 bridges in the county that are in constant need of repair, replacement, and maintenance, and they're old bridges. So we're putting money back into that, coupled with monies that we're now going to receive from the state through the transportation bill that was passed. We'll be able to tackle our bridges a little bit more aggressively. We actually added people into general services that oversees the bridges so we can do more of our own work. We did, though, find in some places where we maybe cut a little bit too much and recognized that and decided we needed to reverse our trend or our course in that. One of those areas was with nursing and in the Champaign Manor. There was a lot of outsourcing. We found that that really wasn't giving us the quality that we were accustomed to. So we've added back nurses there. We've had to add back in our children and youth, especially with a lot of the new regulations that are coming on and the caseload and the casework that social workers and caseworkers are providing. So we've made additional investments there, as well as investments into technology that have helped make things a little bit more efficient and more effective in the county. So we're still very much focused on the budget, but I think that the things that we've done over the last couple of years, being here today as opposed to 2 years ago, you wonder how's this all going to turn out. And today, as I said, we just announced last week, it's proven to have been a good decision, those decisions that we've made over the last couple of years, and we'll continue to do that. If you've been to Doylestown anytime recently, you've probably seen the new Justice Center that is being built. It's almost finished. Of course, that is a major capital project for the county. That's added
to our debt service. I think the paper was kind enough to report that the other week when we were showing sort of our financial statements. But the rest of the picture that they didn't present to you was that while our debt service levels have climbed because of the new Justice Center, what they didn't show is what's going to happen in a couple of years, because in about 3 or 4 years, that debt service will start to precipitously drop off. Not because we'll pay off the Justice Center, but prior debt that we had will start to be paid off. And so we'll still be in a very strong financial position, which has allowed us to keep our AAA bond rating that we still have at the county. We're moving through with the Justice Center. That project should be completed in the new courts, or the courts moving into the new building in January of 2015. I've always asked, are we on schedule? And the answer is, well, yes. If you look at today's schedule, where we started, we're further behind due to a lot of different circumstances, not the least of which was weather. Because we got a late start, it pushed some things back. The weather that we had that last year and the year before slowed us down. But all in all, the project will be done. It will be done on budget, within the budget that was allotted, using contingencies and the various resources that we have for it. But it's going to be a magnificent building, and one that I think every resident in the county will be very proud of. About 3 or 4 months ago, I was walking through the building on a tour, and they had just put the grid work in for the ceiling tiles, but they didn't have the ceiling tiles in yet. I was walking down, and you could see the ductwork that was in for the heating and cooling, HVAC ductwork. And as I walked through, looking above, stamped on the ductwork was a stamp that said, "Made in USA, made at USS Fairless." So I thought that was pretty cool that in the courthouse, the ductwork that is fabricated was fabricated at USS Fairless sites. The steel that is in the Justice Center was fabricated by Samuel Grossi & Son, which is a Ben Salem business. And there are numerous contractors and subcontractors who have worked on that building who are Bucks County businesses. So I think that's been a good win as well. Right on the heels of opening that Justice Center is our next big project, which is reusing the existing courthouse, which is what I've tried to update a lot of the folks that I've talked to through the last couple of years of what we're going to do with that. I'm surprised, I guess it shouldn't be, but I think everybody thinks we're all moving into the new Justice Center. By that, the commissioners and our administration, and the answer is we're not. Only the courts are moving into the new Justice Center, and specific row offices that support the courts. The commissioners, the treasurer, the register of wills, the recorder of deeds, the controller will still be in the courthouse. So just for round numbers, when the courts open in the new Justice Center, probably about 60% of the building will be vacated. And so we've been working on a plan to reuse that space. And the simple explanation for our plan is what we are going to do is consolidate our operations into the courthouse. And by that I mean reduce our footprint that's outside of the courthouse and move people back into that empty space. We spend considerable dollars every year on leases that are throughout the county. We'll move those agencies and departments back into the courthouse, which will save us money. We'll take buildings that we own in and around the courthouse that we have, and we'll sell them, put them back on the tax rolls, try to get out from all that overhead, put properties back on the tax rolls, get out of those leases that I talked about, and hopefully have a more efficient layout for our administrative services within the existing courthouse. It's a 5-year project at a minimum. We're not doing it all in one night. We're going to do it in phases because we have to phase different people from leases and move people in different buildings. But ultimately, you'll have the core of county administration services that will be located back into the courthouse. So maybe for about 4 to 5 years, that should be complete, which again will reduce our footprint outside of the courthouse. We'll still have different facilities, still our district courts, we still have our Lower Bucks Government Service Center, Upper Bucks Government Service Center. But we have a lot of buildings, as I said, in Doylestown, some in Warminster, that we'll be able to leave from and locate people and co-locate them in a way that's a lot better. And reuse the existing courthouse. We're not tearing it down. We're not building, some people ask if we're building a performing art Justice Center. We're not. We're going to keep the rotunda the way it is in the sense of the roundness of it. We're not changing that, but we'll reuse a lot of the courtrooms as conference rooms and meeting rooms and community rooms. A lot of things that we're lacking today in county government when it comes to bringing people together to meet, to have board meetings, conference meetings, community events. We'll reuse the courtrooms that way and then shuffle people around throughout the building so they're better aligned with the departments that they work with. So those are some big capital projects with the Justice Center, the reuse of that. I've mentioned open space and agricultural preservation, our bridges. We continue to make investment in upgrading them. And all of that sort of circles back to what I was talking about in terms of our budget, where we are with the debt service, where we are with the services that we're providing. And again, as I reported at our meeting last week that we had at the Grangeville, we're in a good financial position and we're in a strong position to still deal with some challenges that are out there. We don't know what the pension contributions will be for next year, but like as I said, we're 99.2% funded. We'll see that coming down. We'll continue to ramp up the services that we're providing, and keep a close eye on that. And then again, dealing with what we have to deal with from the state and the federal government in terms of the resources we get with them to provide those services. In a budget that's tallied all up, it's a $470 million budget that we administer in the county. So it's quite significant, with the majority of that, nearly half of that, I should say, going to sort of human services, the children, the youth, the nursing home, corrections, and things of that nature. So that's always the first thing that I talk about in terms of what we're focused on at county. You're probably aware of some of the things we've been doing with economic development. That's been a big priority of mine personally, working with Commissioner Morrisville and Commissioner Martin on that over the last couple of years. We've sort of redone, repurposed all of our economic development programs into a new sort of branding, if you will, called Bucks to Invest. So we took existing loan programs that we had and changed them in order to meet the needs of today's businesses and the communities in the marketplace. We have our own venture capital fund. I think we're the only county in the country that does that. I keep saying that when somebody prove me wrong, maybe they will, but we made a decision as a retirement board to make an investment with Ben Franklin Technology Partners. We gave them $2 million to create our own venture capital fund called VC for VC. We just funded our first 3 businesses 2 weeks ago. They were approved. The requirements, they're technology businesses, startups in some cases, but they'll be required, if they're not already in Bucks County, to locate in Bucks County. So that's a win-win in terms of economic development and also a win in terms of our retirement fund. We have a lot of new programs for redeveloping brownfield sites, downtowns called Bucks Renewed and Bucks Rebuilt. And we just announced last week, actually at the Grange Fair, a new program called Taste and Tour Bucks County, which will be a loan program geared towards the tourism industry and our agricultural industry. Agriculture and tourism are still huge drivers of our economy here in Bucks County. And so we wanted to tailor programs that we thought could help the family farmer, help the farmer markets, help the CSAs, help our smaller tourist industries, theaters, business districts that are dependent upon tourism as part of their economic drivers. So we just announced that program last week, and a lot of other initiatives that we're working with our Planning Commission and the Bucks County Industrial Development Authority. And we created a new position in county in our Planning Commission for a director that we in charge of. Basically, her title is Coordinator of Planning and Economic Development Services. Margie McKevitt, many of you may know, she's been at the Planning Commission for a long time, is now charged with sort of coordinating and quarterbacking the efforts and the initiatives we have with the Planning Commission, our communities, and economic development matters. And part of that's in our new municipal economic development initiative, where we're working with municipalities throughout the county to help them with planning as it relates to economic development. So that's been a lot of the effort that we've put in over the last couple of years. Sort of the next horizon for, at least for me, is going to be community development and working with our CDBG program. We've changed that now to be a housing and community development. We just hired a new director, Roger Collins, who's the former executive director of the Bucks County Community Council, is now going to oversee our housing and community development office. And we're excited about that, and we've got some challenges to try to revamp what we're doing with community development, housing development, with an eye towards having impact on redevelopment and reinvestment into our boroughs, in particular into our neighborhoods and communities. One last thing I'll touch on, and then I'll be quiet and be happy to take questions and have a little bit of a dialogue, is One of the other major expenditures we had this year, really goes back to last year, was the whole upgrading we're doing with our radios. And I know you're well aware of that, how it impacts your community here, but it's called the narrowbanding project, and it's one of those unfunded federal mandates, which is costing us, all of us, nearly $40 million. But at the end of the day, we'll have a whole new system. We're in the process of doing that. Hopefully that will go live in 2015, somewhere in the beginning of 2015. New radios for police, fire, EMS, the whole ball of wax, new towers that we're putting up. We just got our last tower approved in Buckingham Township a couple weeks ago, which was a big victory for us. And that's been a major initiative that's been underway with our emergency communications team. And I know you're probably well aware of that in terms of how it impacts your police and your local fire and EMS here. So there are a couple of things that are on my list that I wanted to share with you. And again, I'm just here to really share those priorities and then hear from you what I should be aware of and what are some of the priorities for you here in Morrisville.
Well, thank you. I've been pretty busy as ever.
Yeah. It's a little busy.
Just, I'll work backwards just for a moment to talk about the radios. We have diligently putting away money for these radios. So,
Good. And you know we've got the same type of loan program that was set up in the past in terms of, because we've already borrowed the money for that.
so anyone have any questions?
I think for me, I was going to find out that have this extension of the space. It was real important for so many municipalities like us are built out and trying to utilize that money for projects. So we're in the process of working on doing something with our Morrisville Park. So
I'm aware of that. So
yeah,
that's good.
yeah. So I was hoping that you could have some extra time to work on something to get that done. For looking at the full through the litigation round, and we're ready to move on that soon. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and we're happy to do it. I mean, quite frankly, the reason for sort of the deadline is it's more of a cash flow issue for us because it's not like we borrowed all of the $78 million that was allocated, whatever the number was. We borrowed in tranches. So when we're forecasting out 2 or 3 years, we need to put some type of, I don't want to say artificial, but some type of deadline there to understand, okay, what do we need to put into the queue for the next years? And we got back from a lot of municipalities that we're not there yet, we're not ready, but we have something, or we're working on something. So knowing that, we were able to make that extension, and I know it seems to be benefiting you and some other municipalities. I'm still doing it as well.
Thank you. Thank you
You're
very much.
welcome.
Let you off easy. I would just say thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
I know it took a couple months to schedule, but
And so,
we actually thought that this was going to be a month where, let us on the agenda so that we could talk conscious way. Wish we let you know the
Well, I appreciate all the time that you gave me. It's good to see everyone. Enjoy the rest of your summer, which is almost over. All right.
Thank you.
Yep, sure. Thank you very much.
At this time, we are going to go into a very brief executive session with our attorney, Eric Brown. It is 8:08, we can try the opportunity.
I didn't know till I just feeling good.